Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 100. Can you believe we made it this far?
Certainly cannot.
It's pretty incredible.
100.
But we didn't really do the first 50 or something.
Like
so
70.
It doesn't totally count. Episode 100 of the Mountain Bike Podcast, and this is going to be a unique one. We have a special guest hailing all the way from
Morgan Hill, California.
Morgan Hill. We have Brad Waldron, who is the founder and CEO of Cali Protectives. So we're going to talk about mostly helmets.
Go figure.
Go figure. I'm pretty excited to talk about that. Everyone who rides a mountain bike wears a helmet. It's a very important piece of gear for all of us. And yeah, we're gonna basically just drill Brad with every possible question we can regarding helmets, helmet technology, helmet maintenance and care. I don't know what else.
How often you should get a new one?
All sorts of things.
Did you say that?
What color is fastest?
What color is fastest?
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah. I'm just gonna stop there.
Before we jump into helmets, let's quickly mention that some other exciting things happened, which hasn't happened in a while. New products in the bike industry, new bikes. Yeti released how many bikes?
Three bikes. Three all new bikes.
All 29ers.
All 29ers.
One SB 120, 140, and 160.
Pretty awesome.
And you guys went there.
We went to
Jared
Colorado.
and Liam,
We
went
did
to,
a top
ride
secret
them
mission to Yeti headquarters in Golden, Colorado.
Rode some
Where we got to ride
bikes
some bikes.
and checked them out.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
they're
felt
nice.
like I was in like a top secret military facility, eyeing certain.
Yeah, Yeti likes to behave that
Yeti,
way,
yeah.
as if they're selling ballistic missiles to the
Yeah,
government or something.
NASA, full NDAs, signed my life away.
Yeah.
Not really, but
The bikes look really good. I'm
look
impressed. I mean, they're definitely a really nice refinement to what they've had prior, and people seem to be loving them in the comments. Other than not so happy about the price.
Yeah. Usual suspects.
price and weight.
Usual.
But those guys are the loudest. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
weight is so seemingly irrelevant, and no one even talks about weight anymore. No one even discloses frame weight, which
No.
Yeah.
that's the only thing that's really on Yeti's end is the frame weight.
Yep, and I think
Yeah.
frame weight's the least. Like it matters probably the least. I mean, rear unsprung weight maybe, but yeah, it's the most stationary part of your bike. So
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Bikes look good. We've got three
Yeah.
separate YouTube videos where Jared himself goes
Wow.
into extensive detail to tell you about those three bikes.
Yeah, that's right.
Brad, have you ever had a Yeti?
I have not, but I've seen the ones out here. I'd like to talk about those. Oh, wait.
You're currently on a Pivot Switchblade, right?
I am.
Yeah, Jared and I just got to ride with Brad. We showed him some of the local trails, three little short downhill trails that are local in the Newberry Park here. Did you like them? What'd you think?
I definitely liked them.
Yeah,
Good place to ride.
yeah. It's fun. It's fun because it's social and they're cool and unique. And I don't know. I enjoy riding there. But I told Jared, I was like, let's just go to Water Tower. He's like, no, I don't want to go there.
I've never
A
been.
little more adventure for you, you know? I was like, well, how often is he in town, you know? Like, show him the goods,
Yeah.
but we didn't have a ton of time, so.
Come back on a Saturday and we'll do
Yeah.
a big old
There you
huge
go.
loop in the Santa Monica Mountains.
Yeah.
But just got a little teaser. You just got to ride these little trails and look at the Santa Monica Mountains.
It was a beautiful night. So
It was super
no
nice.
complaints here.
that sunset
It was
pretty.
just about perfect, yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. That was really nice. I love riding bikes. It's quite fun.
Yeah.
And we got to test out the new Cali Cascade helmet.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
It was great.
Which I've been eyeing. So, a little backstory, how Brad ended up here. Let's see, about 3 months ago, I was in a search for a new helmet, and I just had trouble finding things that fit my head and something that I liked. And I walked into our showroom in the California store, and I saw one of Cali's Maya 3.0s, and I was like, whoa. This looks sweet. This has come a long way since the last time I saw a Cali helmet, tried it on, it fit, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try this one. And it must have been the third or fourth helmet that I'd tried. I was just trying a bunch of different ones to see what I liked and what fit. And I was like, wow, this is really nice. And I happen to know John Sachs over at Cali. What does John do?
He is our national sales manager.
National sales manager. So John Sachs has known me since I must have been 14 years old. So my very first job at a bike shop locally here when I was a teenager, John was a J&B rep. J&B is sort of a behind-the-scenes distributor of bike parts. And John would come in every week and help the owners there figure out what they needed to buy. And he would just hang out and chat. And he was just the most personable, cool dude ever. And I've known him ever since. And then he went to KHS after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I met him at KHS when I was
Yeah.
probably 14 myself at a bike shop.
Yeah. Everybody knows John
Yeah.
Sachs, man. He's such a cool dude. And then did he go right to you after KHS?
Yeah, we stole him.
Yeah.
We took him. No, he needed to move. Family issues moved, and so he'd been an outside rep for us for 5, 6, 7 years, and I mean, I traveled with him a few times, and it was awesome because he'd walk into a store and they'd go, "Oh, it must be Tuesday at 10." Because John had his route, and he made sure that he was on time. And sometimes you travel with reps, and it's like, "Oh, well, let's go here today, or let's go there." But John had it dialed.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, John's so cool. So I ran into John. It must have been 2018 at it was called Saddle Drive Bike Industry Event, and that's where I briefly met you, Brad, in person, and one of your other guys that works for Cali. And remember just hanging out with John and just talking helmets because it was he just wanted to tell me everything about Cali and all this stuff, and we just had a great time, and it was really cool. It was cool to just catch up with him and then talk to you briefly and talk more about helmets. And I don't know, I learned a lot of stuff that night as we kind of sat and had cocktails and talked about mountain bike helmets, and that was kind of always on my head. I was like, wow, these guys really are into this. I was like, they're really seriously into this, and
It is a curse.
yeah, blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
But it just, hanging out, it kind of, and talking to John, and it was just, I don't know, it exposed to me to kind of some more of the behind the scenes stuff that happens. And it made me start to think more about these helmet testing standards and how helmets are marketed and how they're not able to be marketed, and there's caution around all that. So it was just cool. But so anyways, that was 2018. And then recently I put on that Cali Maya helmet, and I was like, oh, I like this thing. And so I emailed John. I was like, hey man, what's going on with you? I was like, what do you think of this Virginia Tech standard? I saw that Cali wasn't super high on there. And he's like, blah, 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 but I got to tell you over the phone or something. And I was like, hey, you should come down and get on the podcast. He's like, I'll do you one better. I'll send down the CEO to be on your podcast.
Oh, great. Where's John now? Where's John when I need him?
John now. He's probably watching a sports game right now.
Yeah. I think he's waxing his snowboard.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, that's how Brad ended up down here. So thanks for coming, by
Thanks
the way.
for having me.
Appreciate it. I definitely think this is an interesting topic for mountain bikers to learn more about, and something that's, it's interesting. There's a lot to it. We're going to try and stay high level and bring some value in regards to helmets, and hopefully not get too deep in the weeds, although that's Brad's specialty. What did you told me earlier, you said most helmet companies should have a CEO that's a marketer and not an engineer. And I said, but you're an engineer.
Yeah, I always say that you should have a sales guy or a marketing guy as your CEO, because I get too much in the weeds sometimes, and not as much about profits as the CEO really needs to think about. But as long as I'm in this seat, that's not going to change. It's going to be safety first.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's probably I would imagine that's a very different scene when you go over to other companies that sell bike helmets or helmet technology that are publicly traded and beholden to quarterly earnings reports and that whole level of shenanigans. I like that. So I appreciate those comments. Well, since we're on that topic, let's talk about the disclaimers.
Okay.
So what are you, as a CEO and founder of a helmet company, what are you allowed to say, not allowed to say, or maybe afraid to say because of legal reasons? And once I heard about this, I was like, oh, that actually makes a ton of sense. And I started realizing that all of this marketing is very vague. And I mean, even you look at huge companies in that industry that make helmets, and there really is not. There's a lot of hoo-ha and beating around the bush and no, I don't know. So tell us about that.
Sure. I mean, first of all, it comes down to people being concerned about lawsuits. You start making claims and saying I'm safer, and lawyers get hold of that, and they start, they're gonna just crush you in a lawsuit, right? So that fear comes into play. Then the reality is our testing is all over the place. Each test lab gives you different results. So, what are you going to stand behind? So first and foremost, it is the fear of lawsuits, right? We've been super lucky. We've only had one, and it had nothing to do with that helmet. It had something to do with a knee guard, and it was really nothing. But it is real for companies. I mean, we are in what I like to call litigation nation, and we worry about those things, just like bike companies do.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'd definitely say one of the downsides to the U.S. is it's the most litigious country in the world, and there's a lot of shenanigans that happens here just because of that. Which is not cool. So anyways, in case you do accidentally say something is safer or better, legal disclaimer.
Legal disclaimer, yeah.
Or we do also. We can't say that either. Or maybe we can because we're not the manufacturer. Who knows? Disclaimer, anything you hear on this podcast may or may not be the truth. But, it's still a podcast, so. And you can listen to it on Spotify because they don't care.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Sorry for the interruption. Just a quick note to let you know Trail One Components is having a sale for the trails all November, where $2 per product sold will go to trail networks, and the whole catalog is discounted 20% plus. Trail One is a mountain bike component brand myself and the WC crew co-founded, so we could make mountain bike parts that we have always wanted while simultaneously supporting the sport that we all love with a give-back model to trail networks. It would mean the world to us if you scoped the Trail One website at trailone.bike. That's TRAILONE.bike. Thanks. And now, back to the show. Well, let's do a couple quick and important ones on helmets. Jared, rapid fire.
All right. When does a helmet need to be replaced? Time, crash, both?
Let's talk time first.
All right.
There's been numerous tests done on 10-year-old helmets, 15-year-old helmets even. Bicycle Helmet Safety Institute ran a bunch of those. What it really comes down to is how the helmet has been handled. So if I take one that got stuck in my warehouse somewhere, it's going to test out pretty much the same, not pretty much, the same as it did the day that it got into my warehouse. What really affects your helmet is use. So UV light, if you stick it in the back of your car and it takes heat, takes UV light, that just eats up primarily EPS. So that's going to hurt it. So
EPS, just real quick.
Expanded polystyrene, that's the foam that is primarily used. Many people using other things now, including us. But it really comes down to use, how it's been handled, how you've handled it. If you're out riding a lot, like, I hope we all are, some companies will say 5 years. I think, they kind of got put, in a corner and said, how long does this last? And some people would probably like them to say 3 so that you replace it more often. But it really comes down to how much you're riding it and how you're handling it. For sure. Then we can get into the crash stuff. I mean, I look at a lot of crash helmets. We have a crash replacement policy, so I can actually study them. I do look at them. I cut them open to look at the crush, look at the breakage. But before you get into that, if you're at home and you're looking at your helmet and you got any kind of crack in it, it's not going to withstand the same kind of impact that it was designed to do. There's many companies that are looking at materials that are multi-impact. I do have a helmet on the motorcycle side that I can hit the same helmet 80 times or have hit it 80 times. But that's a special material that's new to the market. But your general bike helmets that we can buy from, your nice bike shops like you guys down to your Walmart helmet is normally expanded polystyrene, one hit wonder, one and done. Does a great job. Nothing dissipates energy quite as efficient at the weight that expanded polystyrene does.
All right.
So one time.
One and done.
Hit your head, replace it.
That's it.
So, well, I was actually going to ask a question. Just like based on that. Is that basically like, compensating for the fact that you potentially could crash in the same place or for the entirety of that?
It really does come down to the risk of hitting in the same place.
Yeah.
And, getting all those crash helmets back, you see places that are very typical. Your temple, because we're all, in our heads when we crash, we're trying not to put our hands out. We're trying to roll with our arms in, and what you do is you turn your head right there, and that's a very typical spot. I've seen helmets with a big smack on the top, and I called the guy, "What the hell happened to you?" It turned out a tree branch had fallen on him while riding. Wow. Helmet was one of the most destroyed helmets I've ever got back, and it's like, okay, that's pretty damn rare. But but yeah, it is the risk of hitting in the same spot.
Cool.
What's the likelihood? Okay.
50-50.
Yeah.
Take that risk. That's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Too high.
Yeah, I don't have the answer
These
for that
things
one.
are not that expensive. It's not worth that risk.
Yeah.
Totally.
Crashing your helmet, just replace it.
Yeah. Right on. Next one. Mm-hmm. How to care and clean and care for your helmet. A lot of people ask that one.
Okay, so first of all, I'll go back to what I said. Don't leave it in the back seat of your car.
Yeah.
Don't leave it in the sun. Leave it, somewhere where it's going to not take any more additional abuse than what you're going to do when you're riding. Mild soap. I mean, there are some helmet cleaners on the market. I just say take your pad out, wash it with hand soap, let it dry, and you're going to be fine.
Right on. Yeah. Nice. What are your thoughts on convertible enduro helmets? With a removable chin bar, safe or not, and are they appropriate for downhill?
Okay. We do not make one. So we have our highly ventilated models called the Invader. Mm-hmm. I actually call it a full face trail helmet. I mean, guys, look at your Yeti out here. Our equipment is getting so much better. I mean, and we're riding in ways that we couldn't ride, for me 15 years ago, because our equipment's better. So people should, I like to think you should want to wear a full face if you're hitting some pretty hard enduro stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm not a fan of the convertible stuff because you've got all this mechanics close to your face. So on our Invader, it's fully around. The injection molded piece is a 360 all the way around your head. That's my preference. I've played around with some other brands and seen it, and I have not been convinced yet that what they're doing is where I want to go. If I get smarter and can figure out a way that I'm satisfied with it, then you might see one from us. But right now we do a full 360 all the way around. Mm. I always ask the question, and you probably get a lot of responses to this, and say, how many times you see a guy with his convertible chin bar on his back of his backpack climbing up the hill? Usually you put it on or you don't.
Yeah.
You have it or you don't. But that's kind of a personal preference thing. For me, if you're going to put a chin bar on somebody, I want it to be as strong as it needs to be. We test, as it should be. The Invader, we actually test to the motorcycle standard, which is a little higher than the bike standard, and it can withstand that. But it's just, I like it. If I'm going to put something in front of your face, I want it to not be in question.
Yeah, or removable, right?
I don't want it to come off.
Yeah, and having that removable chin bar and sort of all that, I don't know what you'd call that, hardware that connects the chin bar to the helmet and allows it to detach on and off. Yeah, that is kind of risky, right? I mean, I don't know. Come to think of that, that is a lot of hard metal.
Yeah, just
some of those things
right by your face,
Yeah.
So we prefer the 360 all the way around your head. Mm-hmm. I'm sure those guys did their homework and they've tested it, but we like to go a little bit beyond those tests. Standards are one thing, and I know that's a subject we're going to talk about. But testing beyond the standards is also a choice, and I recommend it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I dig that.
I recommend it. Testing beyond the standards. I recommend it. I like that.
Nice. Well, speaking of standards.
Yeah, speaking of standards. So, Liam, do you pay attention to much of these standards?
I've looked at them before. As far as do I study them? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know even, so Trevor, one of our main mechanics in the California store, he'd brought up the Virginia Tech rating not too long ago. He also probably is more of a Specialized fanboy than anyone else in the company. So
he did race for them for like 5 years. So 6 years.
and so he likes their helmets. And he mentioned, he's like, hey, they have the best rating on the Virginia Tech standard. And I was like, oh, all right, I'll look a little bit more into that. But yeah, I mean, I think standards are one of those things that, going back to what I talked about earlier when I was talking to John that was in Pennsylvania, that bike industry event. And I was, he was telling me about how they create those standards and how, kind of how old they are, how rarely they've been revised, and just the different things involved in those standards. And man, it's it's almost so much to unpack that it just gets mind-numbing because you think about, well, how tight did they put the helmets on the head? Is that a crash test dummy or is it an actual human head with skin? There's like all these variables, and it's like, oh man, do you want to go watch sports or something? Like it's just, it's a lot. It's you start to unpack that and you think, man, there's all these different standards and the way they're actually testing them and how they're. Oh man, it's a lot. So I don't know, Brad. Give us your take on what do you think? Do you think any one of them is great? Do you think they all have merit somewhere, but pros and cons elsewhere? I mean, there's a ton, right? So Virginia Tech, and then that's just would you call it? That's not a standard. It's just like a testing rating, right?
Yeah, they've created their own
rating system.
They started originally with football helmets, and
okay, that makes sense being Virginia
Tech,
right?
And a lot of their data that they built to compare things to came from football. Mm-hmm. So I really look at this stuff as comparative data. I test in a lot of labs around the world. Been doing a lot of testing recently at the University of Strasbourg. I like their methodology. They actually have a star system too, a numeric system that rates helmets. But their tests are different. You get different results there. We do some testing we've done some testing at the Imperial College of London, at their labs, as well as dynamic research in Southern California. And what's interesting, if you do tests all over, is you find different results in each of these labs. So that's why I focus on, just comparative data and what can I learn from it and how can I make a different helmet. You mentioned, all these things that come out. I mean, our standards that we have to pass is CPSC, Consumer Product Safety Commission.
Yeah, and that's only relevant in the United States, right?
It's only relevant in the U.S. Those standards were basically written in the early 70s, where they dropped cadavers on their heads, took them, dropped them down this elevator shaft, and they were measuring skull fracture. And really, it's surprising how little we still know about the brain. We're still learning. We're still trying to figure out. There's even some discussions the other day that are we really measuring the right thing? Mm-hmm. So they're still arguing that the PhDs and professors, and I'm going to let them continue to argue. What we do know is we need to dissipate energy. We need to put. I like to put softer things next to people's heads. I think our helmets are too hard. It's because of that standard. They found out, or dropping those cadavers, it took 300 G's worth of force to crack the skull. That became the standard.
Huge amount of G's.
300 G's is pretty much death.
Yeah.
Right? But
how often would that occur in a natural bike situation?
Not that often.
Yeah.
I've heard numbers.
Yeah, bicycle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, motorcycle, sure, but bicycle, 300 G's?
I've heard
that's
numbers like 1% to 2% of all accidents, maybe. I do know a study from the Imperial College of London said that 80% of all bicycle accidents are below 106 G's. Yet all I got to do in the U.S. is send 6 helmets to an outside test lab, and as long as it does not exceed 300 G's, I'm good to go. So the question you want to ask of your helmet manufacturer is, what more are you doing than just sending this to some outside lab and getting your results? And there's I'm not here to tell you that Cali's the only one that does more. There are other people that care. It's just, I go back to that CEO, engineer in charge versus the money guy. And, I can just speak for us as we're going to go beyond, worrying about what the standards say, because we know that, we're hurting people at, 50, 60 G's. You're having some level of brain trauma. So we want to focus on that and expand the dynamic range of a helmet and not just be focused on making sure that I pass a test. I'm not here to tell those people they're right or wrong. I just know what we believe, and what we want to do is we want to protect you we want you riding back as soon as possible, right? Hopefully immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. That's really interesting. I mean, I think one of the things for me, so before I actually rode mountain bikes, I rode motocross. That's what I did pretty much all as a kid. And then as a early teenager, I got into riding mountain bikes. And and then it's downhill specifically, and it was kind of just like, oh, I'll just wear my moto helmet for downhill. And then a couple years into that, people were like, oh, actually, you shouldn't wear a DOT helmet, DOT, right, Department of Transportation.
Yep.
Like, you shouldn't wear that helmet on a mountain bike because those are made for, motorcycles driving on the freeway, not for mountain bikers riding downhill races. And I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense, but I don't know. And then it's just like one of those things you look into a little bit and your eyes glaze over. But it's tough. So where does that come into play, right? Because a lot of full face helmets that are motocross specific are DOT and Snell, right. And all of the mountain bike full face specific helmets are neither of those.
For me, it comes down to mass. It's simple physics. Force. Reduce the amount of mass, and you're going to reduce the force. So the DOT does some interesting things in helmets to make sure that the shell doesn't get penetrated because you're out there on the road and you might hit an object that'll penetrate. That actually is extremely rare on top of that, but we can talk about that another time. So it forces you to make the shell a lot harder in a DOT helmet, right? Because we're trying to stop these spikes that theoretically you might hit. Whereas not that you can't hit a rock that's pretty spiky, but it's not like this spike test that they drive a spike through. So I like the idea of lighter things next to your head, just reduce the mass. And that's what the bicycle downhill helmets do, is you have less mass on your head. So less mass is good.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, you had mentioned earlier while we were out riding that in Europe they have significantly different standards than we have in the U.S. And you'd said your guys' kind of flagship mountain bike helmet, the Cascade, is lighter. The European version is lighter. Yeah, generally you'll find that across not just our helmets, everybody's helmets that actually spends time designing both for Europe and the U.S. They allow the foam to be a little bit lighter because they don't drop onto certain anvils that tend to pinch the helmets. They drop onto it's called a curbstone anvil, like we do, and then on a flat anvil, like we do. Well, we also use this hemispherical ball looks like the front of a '57 Chevy that comes in and will actually be more loaded in a very specific area, and people can argue, well, that's possible. It's possible. Highly unlikely. I work with some accident recreation experts. You can get a PhD in accident recreation. Wow. And then make a lot of money in court. But another story. And they'll tell me that, both that spike test and that 57 Chevy is not a likely scenario. But, the standards people today kind of say, well, we're going above and beyond. The problem for me in that statement is, well, you're also creating a harder helmet by having those tests. And I'm a big believer that our helmets are too hard. You'll hear me say that over and over again. Our helmets are too hard. You're saying just like in the U.S. in general, bicycle helmets are too hard. Yes. Yeah. Whatever brand you want to talk about, it's based on passing the test to make sure that you don't go over 300 CPSC Gs. Test. Yeah. So, and not fine. Let the standards be what they are. And as a member of the Responsible Helmet Making Club, I'll say that. You just make that up right now? Yeah, I just did. I'm going to try and remember that for some other time. I'm going to say that, we just know that if we can lower the density of what we're putting next to people's heads, we're going to do better across the whole dynamic range instead of just one area. Yeah, that's super interesting. I also just Googled 57 Chevy grill. Okay. Isn't it the one with the two classic car enthusiasts out there?
Maybe I got the wrong car.
Two bulbous headlights.
I think I know what you're saying. Yeah, because you were talking about a more like rounded and
like a rounded.
I'm not much of a car guy. I'm more like you. I'm more of a motorcycle guy.
Yeah.
Come on, Jeff. You don't know what the front end of 50 Chevy looks like. Great.
My classic car knowledge comes from the Disney Pixar movie Cars.
Well, 57 Chevy might be what what's the whatever off topic, but the cop drives. It looks pretty close to that. a sheriff in town. In cars.
Yeah. In
pretty
cars.
similar,
Yeah.
in
No,
cars,
this grill definitely looks very similar to a lot of the grills in the Pixar movie cars.
You would know a Pixar movie.
I've been on that ride at Disneyland many times. Awesome. Highly recommend it. Should we talk about Disneyland ride suggestions, or is that off topic?
Yeah, that's maybe another episode, I guess. I don't know.
So that's cool. I appreciate the unpack on the standards and the testing. And I guess so when you say comparative data, you're like, so when you look at the Virginia Tech rating, you can kind of glean your own takeaways from the particular way they test each helmet. But I guess the key thing for you is that they are testing all of these different helmets in the exact same way each time. Now, whether that testing methodology is actually relevant to the most common mountain bike crashes, right? That's kind of where this comes into play.
Right.
Yeah. Because, I mean, even if you go on the Virginia Tech website and some of this other stuff, when you Google and you look at MIPS's website, all of these testing things, you look at this stuff and it doesn't look, it's just not that realistic. You have like a head with a helmet on it and it comes vertically down and it hits something. It's like,
and you've got accelerometers inside measuring.
Like, there's no neck to deflect it. There's no, the shape of rocks, the shape of, there's just so many variables here. It's crazy. But when I've watched some of these little animations and videos on how these testing things are done, it's like, well, that's cool. But it also, I don't know, if it's not that exact crash in that exact scenario with a perfectly stiff test dummy neck, then it's like,
well, every crash is different, right?
Absolutely.
And every scenario is different. You know how hard in a lab it is to hit the same spot on a helmet? It's not just, I hit it there, I dropped it, but how you put that helmet onto the head form. You can just change it just a little bit. We had a failure, and if you hit it just at the right angle and just right, and of course we went in and we fixed it. We actually reported it to CPSC and worked it out. Fortunately, they did not require a recall because it was so random and so really difficult to find. But we stopped and we redesigned that section and we moved on. But it's really hard to go in and exactly duplicate that you're hitting the exact spot each time. So there's variances. It is interesting when I do go to different labs and I'll go, hey, I want to test this like this. And they always come back and go, well, we think you should test it like this. And the reason they say that is because that's how they get the results that they prefer. You mentioned how hard do you tie a helmet onto that head form? I mean, I have seen tape around the whole helmet. I mean, how realistic is that? When you crash, you have how you asked me earlier, how tight do you have your helmet?
The chin strap.
Chin strap. I like to put one finger between there. I mean, it's got to be comfortable, right? And it's good to have your fit system a little bit tighter so that it's not going to fall off in a crash. But let's be reasonable. We want to be comfortable when we ride, right? Yeah. And I think that's really that's fine. Just a little bit of space there, not drooping down with you can 3-4 inches in, but just a little finger in there and you're fine.
No duct tape.
No duct tape. Not like in the lab. I've heard of certain systems out there that actually really cranks down the helmet onto the head form so that they can get the results that they want to get.
Super comfy. That's interesting. That your comment about back when you were at Specialized made me realize that I totally and accidentally skipped the first part of the podcast I had written down here, which was to just quickly go over your personal history. So you've got a storied past of a carbon manufacturing.
Storied past.
Storied past.
It's right next to troubled past.
It's better than troubled past. I didn't say that. Storied is so storied in my head when I said that is interesting, right? Because you worked at Specialized in a lot of their helmet stuff, and then you also had a carbon manufacturing facility in Asia. And give me your I know it's long,
so I'll do
the
quick, and you can stop me and ask me questions, so I won't bore you with too much with it. I was super lucky. I started out as an aerospace engineer focusing on carbon fiber, got to work on some really awesome military aircraft, B-2 bomber, F-18, Joint Strike Fighter, that kind of stuff. Being in R&D, unlimited timelines, unlimited budget, why would you ever leave that? I'm a cyclist, and I had a chance to go to Specialized. They hired me to be pumps and locks. And I was like, I'm going to take my 25% pay cut and I'm going to go make pumps and
An
locks.
aerospace engineer hired for pumps and locks.
No. Yes.
Man, they're dead serious about those pumps and locks.
Well, ironically,
You make some of the best pumps on the market, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I know. You're a Specialized pump fan. They are good. You're right.
ironically, my first day I showed up and they said, hey, our helmet engineer quit before you had a chance to get here. Would you like that job instead? I'm like, helmets, pumps, locks? Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. A little more meaningfulness on the helmet side.
Oh, by the way, the technician quit too. I'm like, what's wrong with this place? We can talk about that for hours. We'll say that for another podcast. My experience in Specialized was nothing left of fantastic. My departure was amazing. I had moved on for family reasons, and they treated me super well. So we'll get that disclaimer out. Sorry. Yep. But so I, interestingly enough, I had like 10,000 helmets sitting ready to get shipped out. And they're like, you have to go into that lab and test these before we can release these. And I walk into this lab, something I'd never seen. No, there's no test lab like this in aerospace, right? So I go in there and I'm looking around and was fortunate enough to have Dr. Terry Smith from Dynamic Research come up, teach me on a Saturday, how to run this equipment. And the best thing that I did was I stayed in that lab for a year. I'm a really mediocre engineer. I'm a really good technician. I like being in the lab. Somehow I was able to pass my exams and became an engineer, but mostly I'm a hands-on guy and I just like doing that. But the reason I say this, the best thing I did was I learned so much about testing. I didn't just send it into a lab and look at reports and things. I actually learned about how helmets are tested. So that was awesome. I mostly left Specialized because I didn't want to travel. They wanted me to I had progressed to be the director of engineering, and they wanted me to travel to Asia, and I was not interested in that job. So I gave my resignation. Took me 9 more months to leave, but it was on good terms. And then somebody came to me and said, we need a carbon factory in China. Would you help us do that? And my first question was, how many times a year will I have to come? They said 4. I said 4. Okay, I can do 4. Next 7 years.
Outside of Specialized.
Somebody unrelated to Specialized. Next 7 years, 150 days a year in China. I'll openly tell you, I wouldn't do it again. Yeah. No regrets. That's a different story, but it was very difficult. The factory did things like skid plates and pipe guards. KTM was one of our biggest customers. And then we started making helmet shells, motorcycle helmet shells. And we sent them over to a helmet factory. And once again, I got dragged back into helmets. And but while we were making these helmet shells, I started looking at them and test results. And I'm like, why aren't you in-molding these like a bike helmet? And they all looked at me like, no, it's a processing problem. It's impossible. But coming from R&D, I'm like, let's try that. And so that's how Cali was born, was through once we figured out how to in-mold full shell helmets, and we do it on our motorcycle helmets, we do it on our DH helmets, is where we take the shell, you put it in the mold just like a bicycle helmet does, but now with a full shell motorcycle helmet, full shell helmet, and we inject the foam in place. It allows us to thin the shell down and make the foam softer. So back to that softer foam thing. Having a thinner shell is important because now it starts to crush faster, more immediate. If you have a super hard shell, that thing ain't crushing immediately. Right. So now you're depending on your head to get in there and start crushing instead of crushing both from the inside and the outside. Anyway, so we started in motorcycle helmets first. And, we're still involved, but bike just took over. And maybe that's because of my bike background. But we're still in that industry as well.
Yeah. And so that was, you guys founded Cali in 2008?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Cool. Nice. I like it. Well, thank you for that. And my bad for forgetting that whole history portion.
It's really irrelevant.
But it does kind of segue into the next part, which is, to talk about MIPS and spin and wave cell and 60 and choroid, and then you guys call it LDL, low density layer. Low density layer, So, MIPS, man, they have made a serious name for themselves in the helmet world, mountain bikes especially. And I don't know. Everyone kind of, I mean, I think so. Jared, you Instagram poll for questions for this podcast.
Yeah.
A lot of people mentioned
A
MIPS.
lot of people mentioned MIPS.
Yeah, and in what fashion? They just said
asking, is it worth it to like get a helmet with it instead of without it? As like an optional upgrade. What are the benefits? Like, can you compare it to, certain similar technologies from other brands?
Sure.
That was kind of most of the, the gist of the questions that we got about MIPS.
Sure. So MIPS was started, it's a lot older than people realize. Dr. Peter Holder from Sweden came up with this concept and really focused on rotational forces or oblique impacts. It's something that we were not talking about as an industry. So you've got to give him props for that because it's important. We need to reduce those rotational forces. So MIPS is basically a floating slip plane up against the foam inside your helmet. So the concept is you have an oblique impact that takes away those rotational forces. We've tested MIPS. People ask me, why don't you use it? We've tested it. It actually works. I'm not here to dispel MIPS as a non-working thing. We choose not to use it for a couple reasons. I don't like putting a layer between your head and what's supposed to crush. That's why we go for a low density layer, something that actually will squish, whereas that actually slows down the crush a little bit. And my test showed about 10 to 12%. Again, reduces those rotational forces. So we actually, being a lab nut that I am, we went in and we put different systems into 3 different helmets. Our goal was to see what system works best. And so on one helmet, one time our low density layer would be better. The next time MIPS would be better. Another time the system called PIDS might be better. But just up and down all over the map, but all in the same range. And then we put it into another helmet and it did the same except for it performed better overall with all the systems. And then a third helmet that performed way better than all of them with the same variations in that anti-rotation system. What was the difference? Foam density. This is really where my whole foam density obsession came from, was these tests, where I started realizing that it doesn't matter which magic system you put in. If you put softer things next to your head, it's going to perform better. We still have to take care of the high hits. So I like to talk about dynamic range, not just one part. So MIPS is very one-dimensional. It takes care of rotational forces, and it does it okay. I'll even say it does it well. But I want to take care of low G, I want to take care of high G, and I want to take care of rotational forces.
Yeah. All right. I guess in my head I'm kind of thinking, what if you just took all these helmet technologies and stuffed them all into one? So like you took that choroid that Smith uses that's in a bunch of motorcycle helmets and MIPS and your low density foam. Can you just make a super helmet?
Great.
Can you make a patent infringing times 10 super helmet?
Yeah. Ironically, I was speaking to Dr. Holder and Holden at a Eurobike a few years ago, and I was spieling my spiel to him that like helmets are too hard. We need to do better because we think we're hurting people. And he actually said to me, well, those are 2 different helmets, that soft helmet for the low G versus the high G. And I don't know if he'll admit to this or remember this, but I said to him, I'm like, you invented MIPS. We're smarter than this. We can figure this out.
Yeah.
And he kind of, go away, you bother me. But I mean, I will talk helmet safety to anybody who wants to talk to me. I've had, maybe they don't want me to tell you this, but I've had 3 Trek engineers in my office in Morgan Hill asking about what we do. I've sat with Troy Lee in his office talking about what we do. I will invite you in to my world anytime you want to talk about safety. A lot of these things we do. Now you can argue whether you want to or not, but I will have these discussions. When we start talking about environmentally friendly stuff that we're doing, I always joke because I'm like, we use some ocean plastics on the helmet that you guys wore today.
Yeah.
Ocean plastic visor.
I saw that. That's cool.
I'm not out there collecting plastics from the ocean. I work with a company called Ocean Works, and every company could do it. we use recycled EPS. We get the used EPS actually from a Toyota plant in the Midwest because it's actually pretty controlled. And we bring it over to Ohio. That's who we get our EPS process from, and we mix it. That is available to everybody else. You just got to choose to want to do it, and it's expensive. I mean, this helmet that you guys wore today is $260. That is a big pill to swallow. I'm not lost on that. But when we were developing it, you all sitting around and the marketing guys sitting around and the sales guys sitting around and they're all making their pitches. And in the end of the day, it's like, look, we have all this technology, and if we don't try it now, and if we don't put it here, how are we going to know? And so we found that the recycled water bottle straps save the most CO2 emissions of everything we do on that helmet. And so that was only 35-cent addition to that helmet. So now I'm like, oh yeah, let's start putting this in all our helmets. And so we're slowly moving over to that. Can I put an ocean plastic visor on every helmet? No, that's thus a lot more expensive. But if you don't try, you don't know. And so big into the trickle down. Being in the motorcycle world helps a lot because our motorcycle helmets are expensive. Our new line is only carbon. It's, going up market. It's funny. That's all people wanted from us. So I've got a warehouse full of horrible graphics that I'll never sell. But our carbon stuff is what people want. But we can experiment there because there's more room financially, frankly, to try stuff. Try it. And if it works, trickle it down.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because when I think about motorcycle helmets, they're all way more expensive than bicycle helmets, and everyone just kind of accepts that. I bought a motorcycle helmet that was $1,000, and it was just like, well, it's a big purchase, but it's this is a motorcycle. It's like you're in the dirt, you're on the street, you're amongst cars. I don't know. It's
it used to be that motorcycles were a lot more expensive.
Yeah, now motorcycles used to be more expensive.
What's
you're right.
What's that Levo cost now?
Yeah, I know, right?
Not meaning to complain or anything.
Yeah.
But
no,
I mean,
it's a good point.
Yeah, it is a good point.
Yeah. Motorcycles are on par with bicycle prices these days, which is pretty hilarious.
I'm sure you could get a motorcycle helmet too. That's as much as a mountain bike helmet, but you got a nice one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're willing to take that one, I don't know. I mean,
what'd you get? What was it?
The Climb.
Okay.
Yeah, so Climb, it's just like an adventure motorcycle helmet, but it has a transition visor or a glass shield, which is super nice, right? That's super convenient. All the air vents, like it has Koroyd in it. I mean, it's just unbelievably comfortable. And I was telling you earlier about one of my things that I was annoyed with that helmet was it was the best fitting helmet. I really enjoyed it, liked the look, liked the transition. And the downside was that I'm kind of a large. And in that helmet, I had to wear a large. Like, large was the right size, especially because I'm going to wear it for hours on end. You can't have that thing too small. And their large helmets, it's the same shell, large to double or triple XL. And so I look like a bobblehead wearing the thing. And because the size of my body, and then I'm basically wearing a double XL shell. Whereas if I could have got the extra small, the medium shell, it would look so much better. But yeah.
Well, the best helmet you can have is the one you're willing to put on your head.
Yeah.
Whatever brand it is, if you're stoked about wearing it, I'm all for you. I'm not going to sit here and say you got to have a Cali. I'm going to say put the helmet that you're excited to put on your head, and it sounds like you're excited to put that Climb on your head. So good on you.
Yeah, I like that thing. So all right, well, cool. What do you think, guys? What other questions do we have that we want to jump into here?
Let's see.
Well, I guess real quick, you kind of did already answer this, but just to confirm, if, Cali aside, so you didn't own a helmet company, you're buying a helmet, one has MIPS, one doesn't, are you going to spend the extra cash on the MIPS quote-unquote upgrade?
Unfortunately, I have more information than...
You can't answer the question, can you?
No, I mean, well, okay.
Your soul, I can see it.
The answer is how's the consumer to know, right? I mean, I have a bunch of technologies in our helmets that nobody can see.
Yep.
How do you know? I buy material from Italy. ship it to Ohio, mix it with my EPS, and then ship it to China. How smart is that? There's no CEO, there's no marketing sales CEO that would ever let that happen.
You're not increasing your gross margin with that strategy.
No, profit. Yeah. Yeah. So so to answer your question is you're filled with marketing things that how are you to know? And MIPS has done a great job marketing. That is not to say that MIPS doesn't work. I'll go back again and say that MIPS does work. How much does it work? It's really questionable.
One is probably dependent from brand to brand. Who also uses
and
MIPS,
dependent
right?
crash to crash.
Yeah, I was gonna say
right?
scenario specific.
And I'll tell you, if you put softer foam and a MIPS piece in, I'm going to be happy too, right? Because it fits my need that helmets are too hard. And then, then you're adding the MIPS layer in, and that's fine. But when you're asking me, would I buy one? If I wasn't a helmet guy, I guess, because it's just so prevalent. You see that yellow dot somewhere, and what are you to know? And I got geometric shapes inside the EPS, so I do layered foams with EPS. These cone structures. This was an idea by an Australian physicist who did a lot of studies on children's bicycle accidents. And he's like, why are we still putting beer coolers on our kids' heads, right? And he's like, so he came up with, he said, why, let's come up with crumple zones. So his idea was, he calls it cone head because he thought it was funny, thinking, but anyway. So he's got these geometric shapes, inside. And as these cones, you hit the top of the cones crush and they help send energy laterally. And so it sends energy away from your head. It's inside. It's inside the helmet you wore. Mm-hmm. You're never going to see that. You got this cool yellow thing inside and say, hey, that's safety. It's a lot easier to see than trying to tell a story about why,
invisible shapes.
Yeah, invisible shapes. Yeah. And so, I guess, the message I just want to tell people is we are doing the research. We are doing the work. We're working with people way smarter than me, university research and professors and things like that. And other companies can do it too. And some do, few do, and some don't.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Well, let's get some rapid fire going.
Awesome.
This seems like it's this question's kind of relevant for you, Willie. I feel like
for
at
me?
some point in your life you wore a hat under your helmet or a beanie.
I'll be honest. I just didn't wear a helmet when I was young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. Well, I never did that on a mountain bike, but on a BMX bike. Yeah,
BMX bike.
BMX. That is just brutal. Well, it's like the most dangerous thing you can do on a bike.
They have like
nobody wears helmets.
Serious concussions in one summer as a 16-year-old. So not smart then. The question is it dangerous to wear a hat under your helmet? I'm gonna assume yes, but let's hear it from the expert.
I would assume yes too. But.
Yeah, how thick is the hat? Is it those kind of things?
Fitted is it?
Yeah, because some people wear those. The roadies wear the.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Little skin.
I actually just wore.
Isn't that your MIPS layer?
Yeah, see, you wore one of those. Is that your MIPS layer?
Did I say that out loud?
I did just wear one of those little caps, but it's because it was 28 degrees out.
Yeah,
it was freezing.
But those caps are. They're t-shirt thin, aren't they?
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with those.
Those are really thin. I think this question is more like a
baseball.
The caps you guys are wearing, right?
I think the biggest issue is how does it affect the fit? How is that helmet still sitting around your head?
Yeah,
right.
And you have to have sized your helmet around that.
Yeah.
Slide
so
right off,
I like helmets that fit as close to the center of we're talking about rotational forces, right? The one thing that concerns me about your motorcycle helmet is if you have too much space, think about rotational weight in your wheels. We all focus on that. We don't talk about that in a rotational crash. If you have a big helmet, you've got a bigger lever arm. If you've got a smaller helmet, you have a smaller lever arm and less rotational forces. So, if you like to wear a hat and you're wearing a bigger helmet because of it, you're actually increasing that size. Mm-hmm. And now, we just like to keep things as close to the center of rotation as possible. That's going to help you reduce those rotation forces as much as many of these systems.
Yeah. That kind of almost answers the next rapid fire question. What is the proper way to find the correct helmet fit? Probably the one that fits closest to your head and doesn't put you in pain.
Yeah, you don't want a lot of room. You want to be able to. It's got to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I'll even admit quickly that when Cali first started, I was so obsessed with safety. I was not as focused on, the comfort as much as it's got to fit really tight and it's got to be, perfect for every crash situation. But reality is it's got to fit well. The other thing I didn't focus on was colors and graphics, and that didn't help either. But the idea is, I do have to take that engineering hat off occasionally and focus on some of those other things. But back to your point, you just want it to fit close to your head without being uncomfortable. You want to put it on. If you're the kid that's hiding your helmet when you leave the house because you don't want to wear it, that's not good.
Yeah.
I see those kids all the time around our neighborhood. You see those kids riding around on the scooters with the helmet on the handlebar.
Yeah, the helmet on the bars, yeah.
Dude, I grew up skiing. I still have skiing was my first love. I still have a hard time wearing a helmet when I ski.
Yeah. Man, I tried that. It's funny because in the motorcycle world, it's always disclosed. Like if you go on RevZilla, for example, shopping for a motorcycle helmet, they always tell you if it's oval, or round. And they don't really do that for bicycles, so you have no choice but to try a bunch of them on, kind of like what I just recently did. I wore that. I think that Smith helmet looks cool. I couldn't wear that thing. It was one. I think that there's not enough pads in there, but it was such a circle. It just put so much pressure on the front of my head and the back of my head that I was like, I got 30 minutes in this and I have a headache. I couldn't wear that helmet as much as I thought the look was cool.
Head shape's a battle for every company, right?
Yeah, that's a never-ending.
Yeah,
battle, right?
We've had a lot of success with that Maya that you talked about because it has a fairly generous. Yeah, there I finally got the word. Generous fit that people seem to like and dial in. But there are companies that do a more rounded fit. Some talk about Asian fit. So if you were to wear an OGK helmet, for example, they're all much rounder versus the traditional long oval of a European head. You probably got to be much bigger than Cali to have a fit for this type, and this type. And I think we found a balance that hits the majority. We get very few complaints specifically about the Maya. We got other helmets that we missed. We're always trying our best, but everybody's head's a little bit different.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I learned that as a teenager working in a bike shop where there was a ton of foot traffic and people would come in and just try on this helmet, this helmet, this helmet, this helmet, and then finally be like, oh, that one fits nice. It's like, all right. And there really wasn't much science to it other than like, okay, here's how this helmet thing works. Everyone's head's a different shape, and here's 10 brands in front of you, and try all these on, which there's some benefit to walking into a local bike shop that has a boatload of helmets to pull that off.
Our local bike shop is right next to a really good tap house. And sit there. So I'll go there and I'll just watch people go in. And one day there's I won't mention the brand that they primarily push, but they were pushing this thing with some red S on it. Anyway, and the guy, she just kept trying to get him to do it. I'm just watching it. Finally, she pulls out one of our Maya, and the guy puts it on. He goes, "Yeah, this is it." And I could just see her go, "Damn it!" But anyway, it's an individual thing, and you try them on.
It just takes time. Yeah. Well, any other questions you guys want to hit here?
I think that question about carbon is kind of a good.
That is kind of interesting.
Where is that one? Basically,
yes.
Is carbon safer than other materials, or strictly for weight benefits?
It's not safer. I mean, it's a good tool to use in certain situations. If I want to spread load more efficiently, strength to weight ratio in carbon is amazing, right?
Yeah. So it's really just lighter. It's not a safety thing.
No.
Yeah, no. That's what I thought because it's not marketed as a safety thing. It's marketed as it's lighter.
Yeah, it's an amazing material. Obviously, I'm a big fan of it. But for example, we in some of our helmets have something called super vent, and it's a strengthening piece around a vent. And the idea of that is if I want to make a large vent, I can spread the load over a greater area and hit more foam. So it uses more foam by being, now I'm talking stiffer for the first time instead of saying something needs to be softer. But at least because for testing and a helmet engineer, vents are a nightmare. They're the ones that create all the failures, right? And so if we want to have large vents, you're right on the line of whether your helmet's going to stay together when you crash. So, having tools like that will help you. In fact, the helmet you wore today has these super vents. These are not carbon ones, but they're a little bit stiffer material. And the idea is to help that load on an impact spread to the foam. Carbon is not the be-all, end-all. That comes from a long-time, huge fan and an aerospace engineer.
It looks so cool, man.
It does look good. I mean, when you look at our new motorcycle line, it's drool-worthy. I'm sorry.
But it does shave weight, right? I mean,
it does, absolutely.
In a big full-face helmet, it shaves weight.
For sure, in the full-face.
Yeah. And that could go back to your point of a lighter leverage.
Yep.
Right?
Less lever arm, less.
Could be safer in scenarios.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I mainly see just like a full face or,
Are there any half shells with carbon?
I don't think so. At least not that I've seen.
We use it in a few places across some bridges. Kind of helps keep everything together, and but it just jacks the price up in a bicycle helmet.
Definitely.
So so we have a helmet called the Grit. That's a good kind of a road leaning helmet or gravel. And we decided to do a carbon version, and it's just like we're trying to get the cost into work, right? So the Grit's about a $200 helmet. So right now with the carbon piece in, it's like $300, and I'm like, why would you spend that extra money? Because it's cool, But it's not the be all end all.
Yeah.
Got to match your back, your bike, right? Carbon bike.
Gotta look cool, man. Wow. I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of helmet things.
Yeah.
What color is fastest?
Oh, I like that one.
Chartreuse.
Whoa.
Do you use watermelons as test dummies?
We do not.
Would Jeff's hair impact the safety of a helmet?
Don't I have built-in MIPS with my poofy white man fro?
There has been that accusation been made. I'm going to stand on the sideline on that
one. Lawyer talk.
Dodge.
What hair gel do you use?
That's natural. That's called no shampoo.
You didn't even wash it. That's the crazy part.
I wash it with water.
I
It
don't
seems
even know
perfectly
if you need to
reasonable.
wear a helmet because it is so impressively effective.
Did you ever watch? Yeah, disclaimer. That part was a joke. Did you ever watch Scrubs? That
I'm familiar with it, but not
on Comedy Central. There was a scene in there where the main character had this thing, and he's like, "Oh, it's called a hairmet," and it was a helmet with this massive thing off the top, and you're supposed to wear it as a helmet that didn't mess up your hair.
I do not remember that.
You don't remember that?
No.
It was just put in Scrubs hairmet. Maybe it'll pop up. Who knows? It was one episode, but I thought it was hilarious because the guy was all about his hair, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? I bet someone would buy that if that was a real product." Maybe it is on AliExpress.
Bet you it is.
It probably is. Don't buy that. Not safe. Well, Brad, thank you very much. Appreciate your time and for coming down here.
Thanks for the ride.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our listeners, if not every single one of them, will be stoked to have listened to all of this and learned more about helmet and helmet technology. And by the way, if you are listening right now, if you want to check out Kali Helmets, it's Kali. Just type in that Kali helmets into the Google machine, and you will find it and see what they have to offer and all that sort of stuff. Any last words, Brad?
Oh, man. Thanks for having me. It's been a good time.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks
again. Thanks for coming down. And thank you all for listening to episode 100. We will talk to you guys next time.
Love you.
Bon voyage.
Bon voyage.